At the table now, Kevin Hall, who is national economics correspondent for McClatchy Newspapers. His articles are printed in 31 papers around the country. So, Mr. Hall, you're qualified to talk about the Main Street part of all of this. Take what they're doing back there on the Hill and factor it into Main Street, the average American. What does this mean for them?
Well, the average American, I'm not sure appreciates what it does mean for them, certainly by the tone of the calls. What this does is it helps unclog the credit markets. The way corporate America funds itself is through what's called asset-backed commercial paper, which is tied to the money markets funds, which almost froze up, which kind of triggered this whole crisis and put the fear of God in the Treasury Secretary and the Fed chairman. Essentially what it does is it unclogs this and allows this short-term borrowing. Everything kind of happens in the background like an operating system on your computer, and that's what's gone bad and is at the point of shutting down, and what they're trying to do is reboot, so to speak. And
so in their pocketbook, what should they know?
Well, they should know that this probably won't hit them as directly as they think it will in terms of the size of the deficit, because it actually is scored a little differently than it would. It's scored kind of like loan programs as well, since it's an asset that has value and will change in value over time. So when you see the $700 billion, it's not just $700 billion tacked on in a mounting deficit. It's actually an asset that, presuming the housing market doesn't collapse and comes back, that it will change in time. And more than anything else, I think it's one of several things that if everything falls in place, hopefully the economy will, it seems pretty clear we're going to be in recession. The question is, how deep is it? How far do we go?
So is this a pure giveaway, as some of our callers might say? Some of the polls suggest people think this is just a bailout of Wall Street, giveaway. They're sending them a bunch of money. Well, how should they be viewing this?
No, I think people interpret it that way, but I don't think it is. At this point, I think the whole desire has been to get the system working. Otherwise, their problems are going to be far more grave than what we've seen so far. So I do think it's, I understand why people see it as a Wall Street bailout, but at this point it's gone well beyond Wall Street, and it's a bailout of the American economy.
Phone numbers on the bottom of the screen for our guest. Kevin Hall is national economics correspondent for McClatchy Newspapers. We have lines for Democrats, Republicans, Independents. Again, our topic, the federal intervention here in the financial markets. Your observations of the week that has just passed leading up to this briefing that happened just a few hours ago. Tell us what you thought.
It's been a momentous week, to say the least. I mean, there are things that are without precedent. The degree to which the markets are in turmoil, it's happening on the background. There's a nice little Saturday Wall Street Journal story here about WAMU crushes TPG. The amount of wealth that's being destroyed around the nation is really interesting. It just doesn't have precedent. Everything, the house of cards is falling, and you get the sense that it might all work out, or it might end up really ugly.
What does that mean long term?
Long term, I think that's the part Americans should be more concerned about. In 2010, the baby boomers, 75 million of them, hit official retirement age, and from that point on, our federal budget is going to be strained like never before. Medicare, Social Security, and even just our budget priorities. A smaller labor force, probably weaker growth if we don't change our immigration policies. So we're going into a very momentous shift in our own national history on a very weak start, weakened going into this critical time.
What did it finally take members on the Hill to get to this point, to an agreement that can be voted on this week?
I think they knew all along they had to get to this point. The question is, you know, a lot of it has been a political game. It's very odd for someone who's followed this for a while to see Democrats rescuing a Republican president who will probably at this point go down as the lamest of lame ducks. He has very little control over his own party, and the GOP seems at war with itself more than with the Democrats. So the Republicans are going after Democrats for a plan that saves a Republican president for problems that happen under a Republican watch. It's a very strange situation.
First call for our guest, Kevin Hall, Blairsville, Georgia. Welcome to the program.
Yes, good morning, Washington Journal.
Morning.
This plan reminds me of paying protection money to the syndicate, and that's pretty much what it is. The corrupt people, the career politicians, the bad policies are still in place. The public has been shut out completely from the negotiations here. There's no exposure, no visibility of what they're doing. It's going to be another scam by the main players Congress, Wall Street, the financial institutions. Let me give you an example real quick. On C-SPAN, just a few weeks ago, they showed the interest that the taxpayers paid on the national debt last year. We paid just on interest on the debt $230 billion before any government service, one item was bought. Now, this is going to be another scam by the Federal Reserve. They're going to print a bunch of money. The money's going to inflate the economy, and they're just going to kick the can down the road. They have no intention of fixing anything.
Thanks for calling. A scam, he says.
I don't know about a scam. The kick the can down the road is certainly how we got here. But I think at this point, it's pretty clear that the way we fund ourselves, the way our capitalist system works is short-term debt. Companies don't keep cash on hand. They roll over debt. The way it all works is falling apart. And I think, I'm not sure people understand that completely, that it is a big deal.
So structurally, what has to change then, do you think?
On the short-term debt or in our...
The whole structure, as you point out.
Well, I think one of the questions going forward from here, there are a couple of things that this bailout package presumes. One, it presumes that we continue down the road of what's called securitization. Right now, banks don't hold mortgages on their balance sheets. They sell it into a secondary market. It's packaged together, sliced and diced. That doesn't just happen with mortgages. It happens with car loans, with credit card debt, etc. It's one of the reasons we've had such a tremendous expansion over the 15, 20-year run we've had. Now, if we don't have that, what is America going to look like? Are we going to go back to the 1970s and 80s, where we have much lower consumer lending? The consumer drives 70% of the economy right now. If securitization goes away and this, we don't rescue this, then we're going to have a very different world. It's not quite sure what it looks like, but you can presume it's going to be harder to get credit, harder to have the things we've had over the last 15 or 20 years. We may not. Period.
And an interesting world for the newest occupant of the White House when that comes in January. What should Senator Obama or Senator McCain be thinking right out of the blocks, do you think?
Small. I think they're going to have to seriously cut back on their ambitions. I think there are places to save. It's going to be interesting to see whoever gets in, how they handle the war cost part of it. That certainly is a big drain. And they're facing entitlement reform. We've got the AMT, which is a monstrous part of the federal budget in terms of taxes. You can't have it all. You either got to cut spending, raise taxes, or do some mix of the both.
Cromwell, Connecticut.